So there are a lot of places and information where a reporter who is very thorough in his job and desires to verify every fact that goes into his story before publication. So a lot of phrases and information are available for the reporter who is very thorough in his job and desires to verify every fact that goes into his story before publication. Some of these avenues are found in the reference manuals maintained in most newsrooms or newspapers. So below is a list of some of the avenues and places available for the reporter to check, cross-check, or even triple-check his facts before going to press. So as a reporter, before going to the press, you are supposed to check your facts, cross-check the facts, and triple-check the facts before publication, kapena broadcast. So you don't just cover stories or news and then without facts, without checking the facts. Yeah? Number one, local and area telephone directories. You can check, verify information from local and area telephone directories, which could be used to verify the spellings of names and the addresses and so on. They are usually reliable, but they are not infallible. So the local and the area telephone directories, they are also infallible, meaning that they are prone to errors. So you need to check and confirm that is it. If you have gone to cover a story, you have engaged a source, you have done an interview, make sure you ask them to write down their name for you. Why? Because if it's a news, TV news story, you are supposed to carry it, to write the manner, to attribute it in a manner that Munwake akufuna. If you are supposed to say Mundrembe dzina lanu lose ababa ndi udindo wanu, because that is supposed to come out in your report or byline, in your story when you publish it. Imagine akulemba kuti munthu yozina lake ndi Gomezian, iwe wakalemba kuti Gomezani. They will not like it. So that ensures that you write their names correctly in a manner that sometimes if it's a broadcast, if it's a broadcast story, you ask them, mabanga pronounce banji dzina lanu ngati lili dzina loti iwe sukudzora mabanga pronounce banji. So you ask them, mabanga pronounce kuti chani. When you're reading your story or your report, you should read the name the way ainwake amatani amanenera. So ask, how do they pronounce this word? How do you pronounce this name? Mungandirembere dzina lyapa akulembere okha osati muzawo zoti mwangu abasi mundirembere dzina lanu amalemba and their title. Yeah? Number two, city town directories. These provide the same information as the telephone directory, but also provide information on the occupations of citizens and the owners or managers of businesses. So the town or city directories provide specific information which you will not find or you might not find in the telephone directories. Specific information like occupation of citizens, owners of buildings or owners of companies, managers of businesses and the like. You might not find them in the local telephone directories, but in the city and town directories you might find them. Number three, state manuals or brochures. These sources provide information on various government agencies. So you go to the Ministry of Information, they are going to provide you with the manuals or brochures containing information of varied government agencies, spokespeople, spokespersons who are able or who can act as your sources. Maps of the city, the country, state, nation, and the world local maps are usually posted in the newsrooms. Others may be found in atlases. If you are lucky, some media institutions have these maps, these details, manuals, brochures about government PROs or spokespeople or ministers, critical people, prominent figures pasted in the boards so that you are able to refer to them. In some instances, you can make reference to the maps of the city, which are either pasted in the newsrooms or found in the national libraries or information bureau centers. There are what is called Barrett's familiar quotations, which help you to quote anyone, not to quote anyone out of context or state a quotation as anonymous when it actually has an author. So you consult the Barrett's familiar quotations in order to obtain a quotation, and if you are to quote it in a manner as exact as it is, because it has an author, you find them in the Barrett's familiar quotations. Miambi Amadijan, African proverbs, and African proverbs, the common sayings. Mandela said, what would say? So there are Barrett's familiar quotations. So you find Barrett's familiar quotations in that compilation when you're looking for a specific or a particular quotation which you do not want to quote out of context. The National Assembly records, gazettes, and Hansards. When you go to the parliament, you find the National Assembly record. When you go to government information bureaus, you find government gazettes. You find in parliament there are Hansards. Hansards are recordings of parliamentary proceedings, anything that has been done in parliament. They are recorded in what they call Hansards. So you are able to find information and anything, critical information in these documents. So these are where government establishments and parastatals store official information for retrieval and reference. So you can make reference to such information. Facts on file. This is a weekly compilation of news from a metropolitan newspaper. Facts on file at daily times, when they publish, they have maybe a weekly compilation of the news that they had. Week in reviews in radio stations. So they have a compilation of all stories that they carried in that particular week or month. They are compiled together, stored in files, and you can make reference to those documents or files for your reference. And check facts. There is what we call the Guinness Book of World Records. Have you heard about the Guinness Book of World Records? You've heard it before, right? So when someone does something outstanding, they are written in the Guinness Book of World of. They have broken a record. They are written in the Guinness Book of Records. So anybody who has done any notable thing, and probably what no one has done before, is usually listed in Guinness Book of World Records. So in that book, you will find reference materials. You can quote, you can refer information, you can fact check in that Guinness Book of Records. So if you have done something very outstanding that nobody has done before, you might find your name written in that Guinness Book of Records. Of recent, Hilda Batch of Nigeria, a cook, chef in Nigeria, cooked for over, is it 3 hours? And she broke the Guinness Book of the Guinness Book record. And her name found its way in that Guinness Book World of Records. Current biographies, You no longer need to worry that you can find the date of birth of a notable personality or his middle name or even place of birth. Check current biographies. You want to check about Chawera, when was he exactly born, how old he is. Check current biographies of Chawera. You find that information. Peter Mutharika, how old he is, whatever is about him, check current biographies. You find that rich information handy for you, and you can fact check your information or your story. Trade and professional journals and newsreaders. You can also consult trade and professional journals and newsreaders for information. This will obviously contain useful information on business and related matter. Questions? Very first. Leaders Guide and Reader's Digest. Any reporter who is not reading Reader's Guide or Reader's Digest is obviously missing out on an important information-loaded book that could be useful to modern reporter. Mugumva, if you are not reading Reader's Digest or Reader's Digest, Reader's Guide or Reader's Digest, you are missing on important information loaded in that book, which can be useful to the modern reporter. So any modern reporter is supposed to be to acquaint themselves with the Reader's Guide and Reader's Digest. Again, Webster's New World Dictionary of the American Language. Have we heard of Webster's New Dictionary? When we go Merriam-Webster's New World Dictionary of the American Language, Google, this definition is from the Webster's New World Book of World Dictionary of the American Language. This is a good reference material for journalists. You can find meanings, explanations, facts, and some things in this book when you consult it for your fact check. Questions on fact checking your stories. Do you have questions? Gift. Any questions? Maybe. There are specific quotations that you might have heard, and you want to quote it. That Barrett's book of quotations has wide variety of quotations. So if you want to quote a certain quotation that is familiar, you are likely to find it there. So to avoid quoting it out of context, you want to quote it verbatim, as in exact words. You can consult the Barrett's book of quotations to get it as exact as it is. Because you don't want to get it out of context or to misquote it or to miss or to omit some words. So you go check in the Barrett's book of quotations and get the exact words that are how they are written in that book. Parifuso. Do you have questions? Okay. So how do you handle sources when you are gathering news? Journalists and the profession rely heavily on dependable sources to succeed with the reporter assignment. For you to succeed in your duties as a reporter, you are supposed to have dependable sources. Sources that are handy to provide you with information, to grant you interviews, to respond to your questionnaires if they are to if you send them. So one of the trade secrets of any reporter or a journalist is the contact with people who confide what is happening in their places of work and interest, whether in politics, business, or society. One great treasure in this profession of journalism is that you have contact with different people. Now, These people confide in you what is happening in their workplaces or in the areas surrounding them, in their environment, in their vicinity or proximities. In their politics, in business, they act, they tip you, they share with you information about what is happening around them. So such sources are necessary as notebooks. You need to keep them because they provide you handy information. They are readily available to provide you with information. So you are supposed to keep them as handy as notebooks. How do you manipulate or manage such sources? Number one, use sources as starting points. Use them as starting points to your stories. For some stories, use sources as starting points for your story, but not the end point. What they say should act as a starting point to your story and not necessarily the end point. Why? Because there is that side of the story that you hear from them. You are supposed to investigate, to find out more, to verify, to check and balance your story. So they will not act as the end point, but the start point of your story. So always double and triple check with other public and private sources before going to the press or on air. Kunogo kontrakita wa Bandalama pachitukuko cha Njigo. If you're writing that story, that source wako wakupatsa that tip or that information. As a journalist, you can't just go and publish kuti anthu akwachuzira akudandaula kambaka chitukuko cha kudyedwa kwa ndalama za chitukuko cha Njigo. You haven't verified. Check with responsible people about that chitukuko. Zadyedwadi ndalama zo. Who and who is involved? How? When? Use the 5 W's per H. We'll learn about the 5 W's per H in news writing. So, check with the other public and private sources before you go to the press or you go on air with your story. Do your research and you will find the supporting facts that corroborate your story or questions the credibility and thus reliability of facts you are about to take to the public. When you check, that's when you are going to get the facts. That should make you to take your story to the public. Don't just wake up and say, andu akut. You haven't checked. What if you'll be in trouble? All right? Maintain a skeptical attitude. Number 2. Do not be reluctant to discard sources' tips if they cannot be substantiated. If you've gone to find out more, to check, to verify, and what you've been told cannot be substantiated, discard it. So if the sources' tips cannot be substantiated, don't be reluctant to discard it. It is healthy to be skeptical and get you in good terms, good books, rather than to go ahead with whatever trash they have tipped you with and get or land you in trouble. So it is a healthy skeptical attitude. It is a healthy skeptical attitude that gets you out of trouble in the long run, and you maintain your credibility as a professional journalist or a professional reporter. So they might masosi ama upanga tip in various ways. They might tell you about issues. It is your duty to collect those stories, information, tips verify, check, is it credible? Can they be substantiated? If they cannot be substantiated, definitely it's a tip, it's a hearsay, it's not a story. You can discard it. So maintain a skeptical attitude unless you verify that it's true. Number 3, be careful with confidential or anonymous sources. Be careful with those that say, yes, we have the right to protect our sources, but be careful with confidential or anonymous sources. Message basi. And then you go ahead with that story without verifying facts. Be careful. You must be careful with sources who give you information in confidence. The off-the-record rule must be obeyed. If they say musandichule, but verify, check the facts. In practice, you sometimes have certain things only if you agree to go off the record and listen without quoting. Yes, you will agree to go off the record with that. Be careful with that. Verify that information. Yeah. So if what the source said is true, you can verify it later with other sources or other facts. Alright? Once you have promised to keep a source's comments confidential, do not break your promise. And I underline, do not break the promise. Sindika kuchulana kale jani? Sindika kuchulana. Osari mwamuza, you've promised the source kuri sindika kuchulana. Iwe ndo ukachula. That's wrong. Yeah? So once you have promised to keep a source's comments confidential, do not break your promise. Be careful not to blunder into suggesting who your source is by some inadvertent reference that can be traced to your source. Sindikuchulani, koma it's very clear kuri nkhani izize oyankhanda wakudakuda kuti anthu they are able to guess kuti nkhani source waka kwenu khawa kuti. Be careful with that. Don't lead people to know kuti nkhani oyankhandi emi. This could lead to dry up of sources for the industry. If you do that, they would move sword over the gas hand. That leads you to dry up because you will not have sources, because you are disclosing your sources. We have the right to protect our sources and make sure you uphold that. Be aware of many editors' attitude and behavior. You will be working in newsrooms where you have editors. You go get the stories and they submit to your editor. Be aware of their attitude and behaviors. The granting of secrecy to a source is an open invitation to exaggerate, a broader embellish or slant. Some reporters have found ways to avoid using unnamed sources. One method is to read back the quote you want to use to diminish the source's anxieties and fears. A second technique is to take the time to discover documents that prove the source's allegation. If you can corroborate any information given to you off the record, you could go ahead and use such information without attributing it to your confidential sources. Ngaredira wanu sanga sunge izizi memulando nkani source wanga nando nisampange nisambulo siningamuuzi. Make sure you find a way on how best you can corroborate your information which you've been given off record to ensure that you protect your sources. If there are other ways that you can attribute your story to, you can attribute it. whilst at the same time you're keeping your source secret or confidential. Ayediranga ndikauza then zankhani yawo nkaulula weni kuti wanena uyu ndisizi ndiwakuti wakuti weni akamuchula chifukwa probably you don't have the right to publish the story. You submit the story passes through different desks or hands. Mubira mugamba yo chief reporter editor kama submit kwa chief editor for publication. Editor janga banga review source one inuyo ndamene mugakhale mavuto. So let us know the behavior of our sources. So how do you develop your sources? Mungabange bangi develop my sources anu. Number one, as you meet more people and learn from your community, you should continuously update your records of contacts. When you go out, meet new people, make sure you mugarenge ma contact. And tofunira umene mwapitako. Update your records of contacts regularly. They come in handy sometimes. Mabiro function amangubatani okanya my business card. So make sure you update the contacts handy. Try to develop a bookkeeping method for keeping tracks of your contacts. Even if it means getting a diary where you can record contacts of useful people who act as your sources, do that. Inena linayo book diary litu. Kadigav masunga ma contact say any list of contacts, all ministers, MPs, government, critical people, any contact menda pesa ya mtu masunga na in the book. Chifuka some phones cannot keep mina and so try to develop a bookkeeping method for keeping tracks of your contacts. Developing sources differ from one journalist to another. How you keep your sources, well, it's not how I will keep my sources. So it varies from one journalist to another. Some of the tips on how you can develop a source are: number one, keep a file box or 3x5 cards. Currently file box little of 3x5 cards. Use one card for each source. Be sure to list the telephone numbers of both office and home, or keep the same information in a small notebook, which you can carry with you, or use both the file and the notebook. If it's not a file, you can use a notebook, like I have already said. Sometimes it pays to leave your address and phone numbers with your source so that he can always call you up when something that is newsworthy turns up, since you as a journalist cannot be everywhere at the same time. So in some instances, it's advisable to give the source your number. But whenever something pops up or they have something, they have a news tip, they can contact you at any time. You are not available at every time, right? At every point. So make sure you call up when you give them your contacts and addresses so that they are able to call you up at any point in time when they want you. Number two, always review your card or notebook from time to time. You have the record, your book record of contacts, make sure you review them from time to time. People are always moving. They are either changing jobs or location. Mwina muntu yamagwira ku Zodiac, they're no longer working ku Zodiac. Mwina muntu yamagwira ku government, they're no longer in government, they're now in a parastate. Amagwira ku Eskom, pano saiso ku Eskom, ari ku Bureau of Standards. So you need to update your list of contacts from time to time. Otherwise, you will use this data. Kantime mugafuna sa kumene ali ku embassy. So update your list of contacts from time to time. Sometimes you call your contacts just to say hello. Mafuna ningobatsani moni. Na hivyo ningobatsani moni abwana. Waimbira chimwendo panda. Honorable, mafuna ningobatsani moni. Do not call them only when you want them for information. Just call them sometimes. If you can afford it, sometimes take your contacts to lunch, dinner, and so on. I don't get mac and bees. Mac and bees. I have a coffee. So know their kids and spouses' names, birthdays, and anniversaries. The bottom line is build a healthy relationship based on trust and confidence with your sources. Build a healthy relationship so that they should also trust you with the information as much as you can trust them for the information that they provide you. If they grow to trust you, they will not have problems talking to you when it's something important turns up. You can also reverse the process. Whenever any useful information comes to you, make it a habit to pass on such to your sources. Whenever something comes to you, very important. When they get tips too, they will pass them to you too. It is a mutual thing. It's not a one-sided thing. It has to be mutual. Whenever they have information, they have a tip, they should tell you. When you have information or a tip, you should tell them. Yeah? In conclusion, journalists have a common saying that a reporter can never be better than his or her sources. Reporters, therefore, spend quite a time looking for and cultivating contacts that could become useful to them in the course of their assignment as reporters. So cultivating and developing sources becomes necessary for every reporter who wants to remain in the game. Gathering news, how to engage sources, how to develop sources, how to check facts of your stories with sources, and the like. News gathering techniques. Parifuso? Adibe? Journalese. We move on to journalese. This is another topic, eh? So the media profession, like every other notable profession, has its language. Mava? You find Ujibadara, they have their own language. Maloya, they have also their own language. So journalists too have their own language. This is sometimes referred to as jargons or technical terms associated with the profession. So for the media industry, the technical language is called journalese. First, we have our own technical language, like any other profession. So we have our journalese. Is this over? Is this electromagnetic spectrum? Funo leader, electromagnetic spectrum. So, journalese is the language of the art of journalism. What is journalese? Tell me, what is journalist? The language of the art of journalism is called journalese. This will be the preoccupation of this chapter or lesson. However, attention will only be paid to those terminologies associated with the newsroom, where reporters and writers usually are usually domicile. So there are so many terminologies, but for the purpose of this class, we are going to talk about those that are associated with the newsroom. Most of the definitions provided in this section were compiled from the Press Association, Reporters Companion by Mecha 2010, online searches, and media-related dictionaries. Number one, we have ad. So, ad, when you say, can you go and do an ad? What they mean is you have to put additional news matter to a story that has already been written or is about to be written. Can you please put ads? What's the ad in this story? Name yeah? Number two, assignment. If we were talking about an assignment in journalism, it's not assignment yage yeah? An assignment is an order to a reporter to cover a story. If I'm giving you an assignment, it's for you to go and cover a story or an event. Can you please go and do your assignment? Go and cover that function. You have been given an assignment at Parliament, so you have to go and do a coverage. So assignment is the day's job given to a reporter to cover by his or her news editor or direct boss. So you are going to cover the assignment on my behalf. So that job that you are going to do on my behalf is an assignment. I've been assigned for this job. Alright? Marv. Attribution means the identification of the person being quoted in the reporter's story. Story yo walemba ndani. You only attribute a story to a source if he or she gives such information on record. Mugamba za ndani. Amele Mungu nenayo ni ndani. So you attribute a story. So when you hear your story lacks attribution, of the sources. Yeah? If a source says you have to state you attribute him. If I would so you attribute a story to a source if he or she gives such information on record. You attribute her to the story. Maringa nandi a gift nanwacha. Maringa anda gift ngondo. Nkani mena mayu anadzimangirira maringa nandi chigumbutso ntumodzi. There is also chigumbutso ntumodzi. Chibwiro ntumodzi ndio chigumbutso ntumodzi. The PS in the Ministry of Youth. Maringa nandi chibwiro kamula. You are attributing the story to a kamula. Ngati your source. Yeah? Actuality. Actuality means on the scene report in broadcasting. Ndiri kuno kulilongwe makamaka pamene papa pamene amati pa interchange pamene pachitika ngozi. That's the actuality. You're giving the actuality. So it's on the scene report in broadcasting. Malo mawairesi ya chisomo kuno kubingu National Stadium umene kuli mpira wa Big Bullets ndi Red Arrows ndine Dave. Okay? Airtime means the time at which a program is broadcast. How much airtime do you want? Siguri mdimayinisa amufoni. Program ndi aidi vanoma ndokalowa tusikoloko ndiruka tukoloko. The airtime is the time at which a program is broadcast. Audio yako sikumveka urantho zoria sound. Background means information that may be used by a writer entirely on his own responsibility and cannot be attributed even to a reliable source. The reporter can only use information given on background on his or her own risk. Remember? Information that in your mabeza about me, Jojo. That's what is called as a background. Can you provide a background to this? Banner, these are headlines written across or near the top of most newspaper page. Bana ndidaba. How about next week? We're going to find out. It is also called a streamer or a newspaper. Having a streaming headline. Beat. They've beat in the beat in the outside yo. Beat the it was instrument. In journalism, in newsroom, beat is the area assigned to a reporter for regular coverage. So a beat could be a place or a subject. Parliament, police, your beat. For instance, State House correspondent has the State House as his or her beat, while energy correspondent has issues related to energy as his or her beat. In the US, beat is also regarded as exclusive story, exclusive interview. To some, in a band, and then it's a beat to them. Alright? Break. This is when a news development comes known and available. See, it's when a news development comes available. Breaking news. Shani. Amadeo, Biba, it's a telephone conversation or interview recorded for later playback on air. Mwabanga interview, mwabanga rekodi, kuli muyuza nthawi ina That's a beeper. Border type is the type in which most of the newspaper is set, usually 8 or 9-point type. Bulletin, news of the day, as presented in each of the media organizations. News bulletin, one news bulletin. Yeah? Byline refers to the name of the author of a story or the name of the reporter who wrote a particular story. What's the byline for the Chagwera Pope Francis Mutual Chanjanjan story? So it's a name of the author of a story or the name of the reporter who wrote a particular story. That's the byline. Bulldog is an early edition, usually the first of a newspaper's edition for the day. Caps, this refers to capital letters or an uppercase letters. Can you put this in caps? No, capital letters. Caption, this is synonymous with cut line. It is the explanatory lines above or below a newspaper photograph, illustration, or diagram. Which one is the caption for this story? This story. 75 out of illustration. It's a caption. Column refers to the vertical division of the news page, which is usually divided into about 5 or more columns. It could also be regarded as a signed article of opinion or strong personnel expressed by an expert. Copy, this refers to the news story or the report. Copy flow is the flow of news story from the reporter to the news desk and to the editor who makes the final decision as to use the story or not. CAR, it's an acronym for computer assisted reporting, which is the use of online database and other data sources for the news story. Some refer to it as database journalism, or others call it precision journalism. Chronic journalism is the kind of reporting and coverage which ignores or treats light-related news of about friends and acquaintances. Continuity refers to all radio and television scripts besides omissions. Q, this is a signal to an announcer, a newscaster, or production personnel to participate in a broadcast. Lights on, camera Action. The cues that you are given. When you are at TV, you are given cues. We are going. Nobody, you are going live. Okay. So, our mom is nobody, we are going live in 3, 2, 1, action. So those are the cues. The signal to the announcer, a newscaster, or production personnel to participate in the broadcast. Cow. It's a term used to describe the beginning of the report. Your cows. New reporters. Cutaway refers to the transition shot from them to another. It is used to avoid jump cuts. Family. Deadline refers to the time in which a reporter, editor, or desk must have completed scheduled work for the day. Deadline refers to the name of the city or town and date which are placed at the beginning of stories not of local origin. What's the deadline for my assignment? Credit line, this line designates the source of a story or card by a news agency of Malawi. Dry, this is a period where there is no news, where you like news. Hey, make it dry. I make it dry. So that's it denotes the period lacking in news. It also called a raw period. Or raw period. Dore refers to the coming platform. Dab refers to the transfer of one video tape to another. Exclusive is the story that is printed solely by one newspaper or an individual. This would also be called a scoop. Edition is the one version of a newspaper that day. Editorial material means all materials in the newspaper that is advertising related. Enterprise copy is a story often covered by a reporter and is like a news story that digs deeper than the usual news story. Establishing shot is a wide shot used to give the viewer a sense of the scene of action. Fade refers to either physical or mechanical lowering of a voice or music to smooth a transition between sounds. Fire is to send a story to office usually by wire or telephone or to put news services in the wire. Jim Jumbo filed this report. Fiber, this refers to minor news materials used to fill up spaces in the newspaper. It is also called a column prosas and shorts. Flag is the printed title of the newspaper on page 1. It is also called logo tag or nameplate. Which one is a flag then?
Daily Times.
That's the flag. Yeah? So like a minute flag. Minute, never one doesn't be.
Bana.
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 Bana, yeah. So, follow, this is a story that follows up a particular theme in a new story form. FM. The FM, yeah? Freelance moderation. Freelance refers to an unattached writer, reporter, photojournalist, or columnist who writes for media organizations or media organizations for free, for a fee. Freelance. Graph is an abbreviation for anyway. So that graffiti, before that graph, can you show me the graph of the note that you write? Handout is the term for written publicity or special interest news sent to a newspaper firm. HFR is the abbreviation standing for hold for release material that cannot be used until it is released by the source or at a designated time. Please, HFR. Please hold for. It is also used to tag a story or tag the story as an embargo. Do you know what an embargo is? No. Dave, what is an embargo? When they say, now embargo. This story is an embargo. It's a story. They've given you a story. This is an embargo. Required against the agreed. So whether you have the story, you're not supposed to publish or disseminate until you are asked or the person responsible to do that has done. So it becomes an embargo until when you says yeah? Jump. Joy. But it means continuation of the story from one page to we jump, we move on to another, we jump to page 2. Yeah? Well, this story has jumped to page 2. Means we can continue to page 2. Q refers to elimination of new story or refusal to use it because it is not newsworthy. Kill that story. That one is it. I have killed it. It also means to spike a story. Log refers to schedule of broadcast. LTK is an abbreviation standing for lead to come. Usually placed after the slug. But the slug, also the slug. This means the lead will be supplied later. Makeup is also called a layout of a design. This is the arrangement of body type, headline, and illustrations and two pages. Masthead refers to the heading on the editorial page that gives information about the newspaper. Please, all the time you must be renewed.
Ndio.